Funding for this program is provided in part by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund and the citizens of Minnesota.
There's a lot of people who drive by this and call it a weed field. The average person in the public probably doesn't distinguish a whole lot between weeds and prairie, unless the things that you see on the prairie are pretty. Pretty in terms of restoration doesn't really have any meaning. Our target goal is not to have it be pretty. Our target goal is to have it function.
Well, this is a restoration project. Many years ago, it was ag land, like so much of our land in this area. And through many discussions with the family and things along those lines, we were able to restore it back, restore some wetlands, and restore the uplands with more of a prairie component. Folks like to plant trees because you grew up, you know, trees are good, more trees are good, and in many ways that they are. But places like this, prairie has its place in the ecosystem and in the habitat world as well. This looks a lot like weeds, and a lot of the farmers, when they come in, they talk about, you know, a program that we worked with them on, and they say, well, the weeds are coming up really good this year. You guys should really like what you're seeing. If you look at it with the naked eye, they do look like weeds, but there's a lot of diversity out here. There's a lot of diversity in a prairie. I think I heard once that, you know, there's 240 different species that were on the prairie. I don't know that all of those were growing right here, but it just gives you an idea of how much diversity there was on the landscape. And so that's what habitat is, all the different things in the ecosystem that are using that. So you got the bugs that are in the different plants and the animals that eat those certain kinds of bugs, and you've got a lot of different things, little different variety of vegetation and variety of different opportunities for wildlife.
This was my grandpa's farm where my dad grew up farming, and then the family, all the brothers and sisters, agreed at one point that they would sell the family farm and donate a portion of it to Pheasants Forever, who in turn, it becomes then a Department of Natural Resources wildlife management area. We have to be careful when we assess remnants to say, oh, it looks really pretty, because we want it to function a certain way. You know, particularly, we're trying here to do a restoration that would promote endangered, threatened species of grassland nesting birds. And it's doing that, but it also does look nice. It's got a lot of species that we planted hoping that they would grow.
It's hard to know what things were 300 years ago, but working with the researchers on this project, you know, we kind of walk around, you say, this has got to be pretty close to what it looked like 300 years ago. Now, not every site, not all of our when you think of set-aside programs, look exactly like those remnant type prairies, but I think we got it pretty close on this one. And doing some of these projects like this on the higher end of the landscape can actually trap a lot of those sediments or the dirty water that's running off in agricultural areas, and it can trap it in the wetlands. It slows it down, which reduces our flooding issues that we run into, and it also prevents outstanding wildlife habitat. If you look behind us, you know, we don't see a lot of trees for perching, and we see, you know, absolutely perfect grassland prairie habitat.
It is an experimental site in which we have planted 4 different types of prairie side by side in triplicate, 11 acres each, to both compare how the restoration techniques that we applied affect the ultimate diversity, but more importantly, we were trying to create structural differences in each of those plots. By structure meaning tall versus short, thick versus thin, to see how different animal species, songbirds, small mammals, pheasants, used those and which ones they had preferences for.
You know, you get to see habitat like this, it's a real rare opportunity because this is natural prairie grasses that you hardly ever see in this part of the world because most of this type of stuff has been taken out.
Pheasants Forever played a major role in getting this site preserved. When the family decided that they would like to see it permanently preserved and restored, they approached Pheasants Forever as a potential buyer of the site. Pheasants Forever raised the money and the family donated a portion of the site. So in the combination of those two made it happen.
What happens is Pheasants Forever are not able to own the property. What we do is we take it and we do everything we need to the property and then we donate it to the DNR so it has perpetual care. Also on this particular piece of property, since we were starting over, we had to not just purchase the property, we also had to start all over again and establish it in natural prairie grasses. And that's what we did. But we will, as an organization, help with anything we can to keep it the way it should be in natural prairie grasses. Ed's grandson is named Sean Schottler, is a doctor, and he works for the research department for the St. Croix Research, and they are part of the Science Museum. And they are actually doing research on this property since it started over from scratch. They came out and did insect infestation, rodent infestation, pheasant nesting. They did all kinds of research on this, and they are continuing to do that. So we can make sure that when we do this again, we will put the proper seeds and forbs down to create the perfect habitat for birds of all kinds.
There's always something happening, whether it's chemistry or biology or physical, there's something going on. So the plants, this plant right now is growing, taking energy and saying, I gotta get up there and I gotta make a seed. That seed is got calories in it, nutrition, which is subsequently either going to be returned, fall on the ground and make a new plant, or be eaten by some bird who uses those calories. That calorie is either gonna make another plant or be food. Later, in another month, this plant's gonna say, okay, I made my seed, it's time to take my energy and go back underground with its nitrogen and the nutrients and store them there. Some of that energy goes into roots, which stay in the ground, making organic matter all throughout the year, making these soils fertile. The fact that we grow 190 bushels an acre corn down here is the result of the fact that this land was previously prairie doing that. It's the opportunity to learn and to show that these systems are both complex and have big benefits to us if, over time, we learn how to both restore them and manage them. And bringing my daughter here is pretty nice, too.
Funding for this program is provided in part by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund and the citizens of Minnesota.